Hi, everybody. My name is Mindful Whispers, and even though the channel name is called Mindful Whispers, I thought it'd be nice if we tried some soft-spoken stuff today. Not everything has to be whispers on an ASMR channel. Now, the Oscars are coming up here in 2024, and I thought that one of the best things that we could do would be an ASMR reading of every single Best Picture nominee, dating all the way back to the first Oscars, which took place in the years 1927 and 1928. I think I'm going to go through the entire list and read off the names of the movies, maybe do some commentary, and clarify which of the nominees was successful in winning the Oscar. Now, a couple things to clarify. I know I just said that the Oscars began in 1927/28. Now, how is that possible? That's because for the first several years of the Oscars, they would qualify the Best Picture winners in 2-year periods, rather than how they do it now in annual periods. I'll make that clarification. And second off, I know that the Oscars buzz is fun and people get quite emotional over their favorite movie of the year not winning or not being nominated, and I know it could be crushing, but I think the important thing to remember is that art is inherently subjective. And as much as I enjoy the Oscars, I think that to a degree, it's foolish to quantify art, to objectify the subjective. But that's just me getting on my soapbox. And you're not here for that. You're here to listen to an ASMR reading of the Oscars. I just quieted down for a bit because a motorcycle was driving past my apartment. But let's start with the nominees for the period of 1927 and 1928. The nominees were the movies Wings, Seventh Heaven, and The Racket. Only 3 nominations, and it went to Wings. My God, we're about to go through almost 100 years of history. Started at 1927, let's get to 2024. For the period of 1928 to 1929, the nominees were The Broadway Melody, Alibi, Hollywood Review, In Old Arizona, and The Patriot. And the winner that year was The Broadway Melody. For the period of 1929 to 1930, the nominees were All Quiet on the Western Front, The Big House, Disraeli, The Divorcee, and The Love Parade. And the winner that year was All Quiet on the Western Front. Now, eagle-eared listeners might realize that All Quiet on the Western Front was a nominee in last year's Oscars as well. For the period of 1930 to 1931, the nominees were Cimarron, East Lynne, The Front Page, Skippy, and Trader Horn. And the winner that year was Cimarron. For the period of 1931 to 1932, the nominees were Grand Hotel, Aerosmith, and that's spelled like a literal Aerosmith, like a literal person who makes arrows, not the band Aerosmith. Bad Girl, The Champ, 5-Star Final, 1 Hour with You, Shanghai Express, and The Smiling Lieutenant. And the winner that year was Grand Hotel. I still haven't listed a movie that I've seen or recognized, and I consider myself to be quite the film historian. Maybe I need to watch more older stuff. Anyway, for the period of 1932 to 1933, the nominees were Cavalcade, 42nd Street, A Farewell to Arms, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, Lady for a Day, Little Women, The Private Life of Henry VIII, She Done Him Wrong, Smilin' Through, and State Fair. And the winner that year was Cavalcade. Now, 1934, or release date of 1934, is the year that they stopped doing the Oscars in 2-year periods. So now we transition to annual Oscars. For 1934, the nominees were It Happened One Night, The Barretts of Wimpole Street, Cleopatra, Flirtation Walk, The Gay Divorcee, Here Comes the Navy, The House of Rothschild, Imitation of Life, One Night of Love, The Thin Man, Viva Via, and The White Parade. And the winner that year was It Happened One Night. Now, you may be realizing that every single winner so far has been the picture that I listed first. And my apologies, but that is just the structure of the list that I'm reading off of. But moving on to 1935, the nominees were Mutiny on the Bounty, Alice Adams, Broadway Melody of 1936, Captain Blood, David Copperfield, The Informer, The Lives of Bengal Lancer, A Midsummer's Night Dream, Les Miserables, Naughty Marietta, Ruggles of Red Gap, and Top Hat. The winner that year was Mutiny on the Bounty. For 1936, the Best Picture nominees were The Great Ziegfeld, Anthony Adverse, Dodsworth, Libeled Lady, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Romeo and Juliet, San Francisco, The Story of Louis Pasteur, A Tale of Two Cities, and Three Smart Girls. That was a good year for Shakespeare adaptations, 1936, but the winner was The Great Ziegfeld. In 1937, the nominees were The Life of Emile Zola, The Awful Truth, Captains Courageous, Dead End, The Good Earth, In Old Chicago, Lost Horizon, 100 Men and a Girl, Stage Door, and A Star is Born. The winner was The Life of Emile Zola. Now, I know that we've crossed some adaptations that you might be familiar with in the newer age. A Star is Born is certainly one of them. For 1938, the nominees were You Can't Take It With You, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Alexander's Ragtime Band, Boys Town, The Citadel, Four Daughters, Grand Illusion, Jezebel, Pygmalion, and Test Pilot. The winner that year was You Can't Take It With You. 1939. Now, here's a big one. The nominees were Gone with the Wind, Dark Victory, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Love Affair, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, Stagecoach, The Wizard of Oz, and Wuthering Heights. Following the structure of this list, yes, Gone with the Wind won Best Picture. We are now entering the 1940s. In 1940, the nominees were Rebecca, All This and Heaven Too, Foreign Correspondent, The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Dictator, Kitty Foyle, The Letter, The Long Voyage Home, Our Town, and The Philadelphia Story. The winner was Rebecca. In 1941, the nominees were How Green Was My Valley, Blossoms in the Dust, Citizen Kane, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, Hold Back the Dawn, The Little Foxes, The Maltese Falcon, One Foot in Heaven, Sergeant York, and Suspicion. Now, Citizen Kane, in a lot of film studies circles, is regarded as one of the most important movies in film history, depending on who you ask. So it might be a surprise to hear that How Green Was My Valley took the Oscar instead of Citizen Kane. 1942 brings us the nominations: Miss Miniver, 49th Parallel, King's Row, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Pied Piper, The Pride of the Yankees, Random Harvest, The Talk of the Town, Wake Island, and Yankee Doodle Dandy. The winner that year was Miss Miniver. Now, 1943 brings us the classic nominations, starting off with Casablanca, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, The Human Comedy, In Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier, The Oxbow Incident, The Song of Bernadette, and Watch on the Rhine. The winner that year, as many of you might know, was Casablanca. 1944 brought us fewer nominations. The nominations in 1944 was Going My Way, Double Indemnity, Gaslight, Since You Went Away, and Wilson. The winner that year was Going My Way. The 1945 nominations were The Lost Weekend, Anchors Away, The Bells of St. Mary, Mildred Pierce, and Spellbound. The winner that year was The Lost Weekend. 1946, Best Picture nominees were The Best Years of Our Lives, Henry V, It's a Wonderful Life, The Razor's Edge, The Yearling. And the winner that year was The Best Years of Our Lives, which hurts because It's a Wonderful Life is an absolute favorite of mine. 1947, the nominations were Gentleman's Agreement, The Bishop's Wife, Crossfire, Great Expectations, and Miracle on 34th Street. The winner was Gentleman's Agreement. Second year in a row that a Christmas-themed movie was my favorite out of the bunch. Now, 1948, the nominations were Hamlet, Johnny Belinda, The Red Shoes, The Snake Pit, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And the winner that year was Hamlet. 1949. The nominations were All the King's Men, Battleground, The Heiress, A Letter to Three Wives, and 12 O'Clock High. The winner that year was All the King's Men. Now here we go, breaching in to yet another decade. 1950. The nominations in 1950 were All About Eve, Born Yesterday, Father of the Bride, King Solomon's Mines, and Sunset Boulevard. I do love Sunset Boulevard, but the winner that year was All About Eve. Something to clarify if I didn't make it clear in the beginning. The years I am mentioning is not the year that the Oscars took place. It's the year that the films had to be released. So at the time of this upload, we are about to view the 2024 Oscars, which will comprise of movies released in 2023. Just to be clear. So when I read the year, that is the year that the movies released. So for movies that released in 1951, the nominations were An American in Paris, Decision Before Dawn, A Place in the Sun, Quo Vadis, and A Streetcar Named Desire. The winner that year, An American in Paris. 1952, the nominations were The Greatest Show on Earth, High Noon, Ivanhoe, Moulin Rouge, and The Quiet Man. The winner that year was The Greatest Show on Earth. 1953, the nominations that year were From Here to Eternity, Julius Caesar, The Robe, Roman Holiday, and Shane. The winner that year was From Here to Eternity. 1954, the nominations were On the Waterfront, The Caine Mutiny, The Country Girl, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Three Coins in the Fountain. And the winner that year was On the Waterfront. 1955, nominations were Marty, Love is a Many-Splendored Thing, Mr. Roberts, Picnic, and The Rose Tattoo. The winner that year was Marty. 1956, the nominations were Around the World in 80 Days, Friendly Persuasion, Giant, The King and I, and The Ten Commandments. The winner was Around the World in 80 Days. I feel like I'm not as up to speed on my 50s movies as I was in the 40s. Although I do enjoy The King and I, but that's only because I was raised on classical musicals. Was always a favorite. Well, let's go to 1957. 1957, the nominations were The Bridge on the River Kwai, 12 Angry Men, Peyton Place, Sayonara, Witness for the Prosecution. The winner that year was The Bridge on the River Kwai. In 1958, the nominations were Gigi, Auntie Mame, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, The Defiant Ones, and Separate Tables. The winner that year was Gigi. In 1959, the nominations were Ben-Hur, Anatomy of a Murder, The Diary of Anne Frank, The Nun's Story, and Room at the Top. The winner that year was Ben-Hur. We are now entering yet another new decade, the 1960s. For the 1960 nominations, we have The Apartment, The Alamo, Elmer Gantry, Sons and Lovers, and The Sundowners. The winner that year was The Apartment. For 1961, our nominations were West Side Story, Fanny, The Guns of Navarone, The Hustler, and Judgment at Nuremberg. The winner that year was another one of my favorite musicals, West Side Story. In 1962, the nominations were Lawrence of Arabia, The Longest Day, The Music Man, Mutiny on the Bounty, and To Kill a Mockingbird. The winner in 1962 was Lawrence of Arabia. In 1963, the nominations were Tom Jones, America, America, Cleopatra, How the West Was Won, and Lilies of the Field. The winner was Tom Jones. In 1964, the nominations were My Fair Lady, Beckett, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, Mary Poppins, and Zorba the Greek. The winner, My Fair Lady. It's interesting how, as we read some of these nominations in 1964, we're getting to movies that prominently feature actors still alive and loved today, from Dick Van Dyke to Rita Moreno. And we keep on going with 1965. The nominations were The Sound of Music, Darling, Dr. Zhivago, Ship of Fools, and 1,000 Crowns. The winner that year was The Sound of Music. And man, oh man, were the hills alive. 1966, the nominations were A Man for All Seasons, Alfie, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, The Sand Pebbles, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. The winner that year was A Man for All Seasons. 1967, the nominations were In the Heat of the Night, Bonnie and Clyde, Dr. Dolittle, The Graduate, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. The winner that year was In the Heat of the Night. In 1968, the nominations were Oliver, Funny Girl, The Lion in Winter, Rachel Rachel, and Romeo and Juliet. The winner that year was Oliver. In 1969, the nominations were Midnight Cowboy, Anne of the Thousand Days, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Hello Dolly, and Z. The winner that year was Midnight Cowboy. We are now entering yet another new decade of film. Welcome to the 1970s. And in 1970, the nominations were Patton, Airport, 5 Easy Pieces, Love Story, and MASH. The winner was Patton. In 1971, the nominations were The French Connection, A Clockwork Orange, Fiddler on the Roof, The Last Picture Show, and Nicholas and Alexandra. The winner that year was The French Connection. In 1972, the nominations were The Godfather, Cabaret, Deliverance, The Emigrants, and Sounder. The winner was The Godfather. Fantastic movie. In 1973, the nominations were The Sting, American Graffiti, Cries and Whispers, The Exorcists, and A Touch of Class. The winner that year was The Sting. In 1974, the nominations were were The Godfather Part 2, Chinatown, The Conversation, Lenny, and The Towering Inferno. And the winner that year was The Godfather Part 2, the first time in cinematic history that a sequel won the Oscar and the original movie itself won the Oscar as well. I was about to say the year before, but that's not true. There was a year of Oscars in between The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. But moving on to films released in 1975, the nominations were One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Barry Lyndon, Dog Day Afternoon, Jaws, and Nashville. The winner was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which a lot of people don't know, famously starred Danny DeVito as well as Jack Nicholson. In 1976, the nominees were Rocky, All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, and Taxi Driver. The winner in 1976 was Rocky. In 1977, the nominations were Annie Hall, The Goodbye Girl, Julia, Star Wars, and The Turning Point. The winner was Annie Hall. In 1978, the nominations were The Deer Hunter, Coming Home, Heaven Can Wait, Midnight Express, and An Unmarried Woman. The winner that year was The Deer Hunter. In 1979, the nominations were Kramer vs. Kramer, All That Jazz, Apocalypse Now, Breaking Away, and Norma Ray. The winner was Kramer vs. Kramer. We are now entering a new decade of film, the 1980s. Nominations are Ordinary People, Coal Miner's Daughter, The Elephant Man, Raging Bull, and Tess. The winner that year was Ordinary People. In 1981, the nominations were Chariots of Fire, Atlantic City, On Golden Pond, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Reds. The winner was Chariots of Fire. In 1982, the nominations were Gandhi, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Missing, Tootsie, and The Verdict. The winner that year was Gandhi. In 1983, the nominations were Terms of Endearment, The Big Chill, The Dresser, The Right Stuff, and Tender Mercies. The winner that year being Terms of Endearment. In 1984, the nominees were Amadeus, The Killing Fields, A Passage to India, Places in the Heart, and A Soldier's Story. The winner that year being Amadeus. In 1985, the nominations were Out of Africa, The Color Purple, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, Prizzy's Honor, and Witness. The winner was Out of Africa. 1986, nominees were Platoon, Children of a Lesser God, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Mission, A Room with a View, and the winner was Platoon. 1987, the nominees were The Last Emperor, Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Hope and Glory, and Moonstruck. winner that year was The Last Emperor. 1988, the nominees were Rain Man, The Accidental Tourist, Dangerous Liaison, Mississippi Burning, and Working Girl. The winner was Rain Man. In 1989, the Best Picture nominees were Driving Miss Daisy, Born on the 4th of July, Dead Poets Society, Field of Dreams, and My Left Foot. The winner was Driving Miss Daisy. We are now entering a new a new decade of film, the 1990s. I wanted to note that we're pretty consistently only having about for the next couple years and the last several decades, it seems like 5-ish Best Picture nominations. Interesting to see how that'll change as we get to more and more contemporary and current Oscar years. And with that, let's go to 1990. 1990, the nominations were Dances with Wolves, Awakenings, Ghost, The Godfather Part 3, and Goodfellas. The winner that year was Dances with Wolves. 1991, the nominations were Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast, Bugsy, JFK, and The Prince of Tides. The winner that year was The Silence of the Lambs. In 1992, Best Picture nominees were Unforgiven, The Crying Game, A Few Good Men, Howard's End, and Scent of a Woman. The winner that year was Unforgiven. In 1993, Best Picture nominees were Schindler's List, The Fugitive, In the Name of the Father, The Piano, The Remains of the Day. The winner that year was Schindler's List. In 1994, the nominees were Forrest Gump, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, and The Shawshank Redemption. The winner that year was Forrest Gump. In 1995, the nominees were Braveheart, Apollo 13, Babe, The Postman, Sense and Sensibility. And the winner that year was Braveheart. In 1996, the nominations were The English Patient, Fargo, Jerry Maguire, Secrets and Lies, and Shine. The winner that year was The English Patient. In 1997, the nominations were Titanic, As Good as It Gets, The Full Monty, Good Will Hunting, and L.A. Confidential. The winner that year was Titanic. In 1998, the nominations were Shakespeare in Love, Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, Saving Private Ryan, and The Thin Red Line. The winner that year was Shakespeare in Love. And in 1999, the nominations were American Beauty, The Cider House Rules, The Green Mile, The Insider, and The Sixth Sense. Wow, The Sixth Sense was a good movie, but Best Picture of the Year? It's kind of crazy. Anyway, the best picture that year was American Beauty. We are now entering yet another decade of film, the 2000s, the new millennium. And the nominees were Gladiator, Chocolat, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Aaron Brockovich, and Traffic. The winner that year was Gladiator. 2001 nominations were A Beautiful Mind, Gosford Park, In the Bedroom, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and Moulin Rouge. The winner that year was A Beautiful Mind. In 2002, the Best Picture nominees were Chicago, Gangs of New York, The Hours, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Pianist. The winner that year was Chicago. In 2003, the nominations were The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Lost in Translation, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, Mystic River, and Seabiscuit. The winner that year was The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. In 2004, the nominations were Million Dollar Baby, The Aviator, Finding Neverland, Ray, and Sideways. The winner that year was Million Dollar Baby. In 2005, the nominations were Crash, Brokeback Mountain, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck, and Munich. The winner that year was Crash. 2006. 2006. The nominations were The Departed, Babel, Letters from Iwo Jima, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Queen. And the winner that year was The Departed. Honestly, The Departed is one of my favorite movies. It's certainly my favorite Scorsese. And I had no idea that it won Best Picture in 2006. Moving on to 2007, the nominations were No Country for Old Men, Atonement, Juno, Michael Clayton, and There Will Be Blood. The winner that year was No Country for Old Men. In 2008, the nominations were Slumdog Millionaire, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Frost Nixon, Milk, and The Reader. The winner that year was Slumdog Millionaire. In 2009, the nominations were The Hurt Locker, Avatar, The Blind Side, District 9, and Education. Inglourious Bastards, Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire, A Serious Man, Up, and Up in the Air. The winner that year was The Hurt Locker. We are entering the penultimate decade of film on our list, the 2010s. The 2010s. Let's get through it. In 2010, the nominations were The King's Speech, Black Swan, The Fighter, Inception, The Kids Are All Right, 127 Hours, The Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Winter's Bone. The winner that year was The King's Speech. We're definitely getting into the territory of 8, potentially 9 Best Picture nominations instead of the 5 that we've had for the last several decades. We come to 2011. The Best Picture nominees were The Artist, The Descendants, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, The Help, Hugo, Midnight in Paris, Moneyball, The Tree of Life, and War Horse. The winner that year was The Artist. In 2012, the nominations were Argo, Amour, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Les Miserables, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30. The winner that year was Argo. 2013. The nominations were 12 Years a Slave, American Hustle, Captain Phillips, Dallas Buyers Club, Gravity, Her, Nebraska, Philomena, and The Wolf of Wall Street. The winner was 12 Years a Slave. 2014, the nominations were Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, American Sniper, Boyhood, The Grand Budapest Hotel, The Imitation Game, Selma, The Theory of Everything, and Whiplash. The winner was Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. 2015, the nominations were Spotlight, The Big Short, Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant, and Room. The winner that year was Spotlight. 2016, the nominations were Moonlight, Arrival, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Hidden Figures, La La Land, Lion, and Manchester by the Sea. This was the famed year of La La Land accidentally being announced as the Best Picture winner when it was in fact Moonlight. 2017, the nominations were The Shape of Water, Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. The winner that year was The Shape of Water. 2018, the nominations were Green Book, Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Roma, A Star is Born, and Vice. The winner that year was Green Book. In 2019, the nominations were Parasite, Ford versus Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. In 2020, the nominations were Nomadland, The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. The winner that year was Nomadland. I'm sorry that I forgot to notate that we are entering our final decade of film. For this video at least. Hopefully the 2020s is not our final decade of film, but I'm kind of locked in and I'm going fully automatic. I didn't realize the video would be so long. Let's put a bow on this thing. 2021. The nominations are Coda, Belfast, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. The winner this year was Coda. And for 2022, the nominations were Everything Everywhere All at Once, All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, The Fablemans, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. And now for the upcoming Oscars that don't have a winner yet but will soon. 2023. The nominations are American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. And that is going to conclude our list. I can't believe that we made it this far. I've done pretty good catching up to these movies. I think I've seen about half the Best Picture nominations. Well, I hope that I've helped you relax. If you were trying to sleep or gain some relaxation of any sort tonight, I hope you've achieved it. Thank you for clicking on this video, listening to me drone on. I hope you got something out of it. And if you enjoy movies as much as me, I hope that you've seen some of the films this year. Because 2023 was a landmark year for movies. Personally, I hope that Oppenheimer wins Best Picture, because it was my favorite of what I've seen so far, but I still need to see American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Past Lives, and The Zone of Interest. Once I see those movies, then I'll be all good. Well, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you.